and you are not sure whether you're going to wake up alive the next day. As a teenager, I was living in Golo district with my family. Golo district was one of the most affected districts by the war between the Lord's Resistance Army rebels and Uganda's People's Defense Forces. In my early teen years, I was in a boarding high school. I am Ketty Anyeko. I am from Golo district in Northern Uganda. The conflict in Northern Uganda happened between 1986 to 2006 between the Ugandan government and the Lord's Resistance Army rebels. Over a period of 20 years, the rebels committed so many atrocities that included abductions of children between the ages of 7 and 15 years. And actually, it's reported that more than 60,000 children and adults were abducted by the Lord's Resistance Army rebels. And although majority were children, and many of them still remain missing to date. And many of those abduction victims were also young girls, the ages of 7 to 15 years, who were taken from high school and forced to become wives and bear children to rebel commanders. As a child, I often ask myself, why is the war being fought? Why can't it be stopped? Why can't others come to help us? Why is every day like this, we're struggling to squeeze ourselves under the bed so that the rebels may not take us? My experience as a child being born and growing up in war drove me to focus most of my work at understanding how this war happened, why it happened, how it impacted girls of my age, particularly girls who were abducted in high schools or in elementary school and taken to be wives to the rebels. Much of my work later on focused on issues of peace building and justice and reconciliation, given both victims and perpetrators have returned to live in the same communities. Issues of reconciliation were particularly very important. But as I did this work, I came to realize that the voices of women who had been abducted at my age as a little girl were actually missing from many of these programs or justice and reconciliations and reparations debates in the country. And as someone who worked in these various aspects of engagement as well, I realized that I also personally lacked an understanding of what does justice and reparations look like for these women. And that's how I came to do this study, to devote my life to writing about it as someone who is writing as an insider, who really understands the context of the conflict, what happened, and has a very detailed understanding of the women's experiences with the already existing relationships as well. We are here to speak about justice and reparations for women who survived sexual and gender-based violence during the war in Northern Uganda. And I came to do this work as a woman who could have ended up in the same situation as these women as well, if I was abducted. And that really drove me to focus most of my career focusing at these survivors. In my work and study, I have come to understand justice as something that is lived in the everyday, something that is holistic and can be achieved in relationship to those around us. Centers of Justice has 4 key components or 4 key takeaways. The first one is place-based justice, which revolves around availability of land where women who survive sexual violence and forced marriage can live on with their children without being evicted. We are about to listen to the stories of some of the women narrated by Moses Komakech, who was my research assistant and came to know the women well.
Abero la tien makimaro ilum kimara pa amak makimara beri pade.
I am one of the family abducted girls. I was abducted in Pade. By that time, I was 18 years of age. I was taken to Sudan, and when I was taken to Sudan, I had a lot of bad experiences. I saw a lot of bad things that happened, and I thought that was going to be my life. That was the way of life, and that's how life was going to be for the rest of my remaining days. When I was there in captivity, it reached a point where now they felt to use to me. The commanders were used to me. They were used to seeing me around because I followed all their instructions, all their rules, and whatever they asked for me to do, I did it without hesitation. So they got so accustomed to me staying there that they didn't have it in their head that I could ever leave the rebel camp. So after the 10 years, I had a deep thought within myself, and I decided, for how long will I be in this difficulty, in this challenging life? So something came into my head. A thought came into my head and said to myself, just say a prayer, get out, and move, and get away from the rebel captivity. So what I did was I didn't hesitate. I took with me 7 soldiers, and that's how and we left the rebel camp. That's how I managed to escape and return back. I want to talk about place-based justice. The challenge we are facing is that we do not have where to put our children. We do not have a place where our children stay and live with us. We are all living with our children in our rental houses, and at the moment we mothers we are becoming now mothers-in-law, and our children are getting married, and they don't have where to stay, and they do not have where to put their children. So the children have to be brought back to us. What would be really important to me is when we are given land. If land is bought for me or land is bought for my child, that would be really very important, because when it's done for my child, it's like it's done for me. When it's done for me, it's like it's done for my child. So at the moment, life is very difficult in these rental places where we are living. You find some of us are living in one roomed house, and that single room you have to share with your children, and some of our children are now abroad. So it's a bit challenging. It's very difficult to share a house, a single room with them. And that's the reason why some of our children are moving about, because they don't have anywhere to stay.
The second component or takeaway of senses of justice as lived is needs-based, which offers a sense of dignity to the women, for the women to live lives of dignity, achievable when women are able to meet their very basic daily needs, like housing, school fees for their children, medical health, feeding, and so on.
Mario, area mero wacho lokom ariat. Ano pere tek tutual bora.
I want to talk about the issue of access to medical needs, access to medical services. We all came back home with when we returned from captivity, many of us returned with a lot of health complications. Some of us, these health complications mostly also arise from carrying heavy loads, carrying a lot of heavy luggage, and also some of us were hit by bullets and bombs. So I feel it's really important um, it's really important if you can get access to medical services, even if even at hospitals, even if the hospital is not meant for survival, it would be important if the government could, if the government could issue us insurance cards. So this insurance card will help us that in that when we go to these hospitals, we access we would access medical services free of charge. I'm saying this because nowadays, for instance, at St. Mary's Hospital, some of us have bullet wounds, some of us still have bullets stuck in us. So the challenge is when we go there, for you to have an operation to remove the bullets, it's really challenging in that they demand a lot of money, of which we do not have. As a result, some of us are passing on. Some of us are dying with this health complications that we came with from captivity.
My name is Atim Angela Lako. I am a survivor of sexual violence. I am a founder for a CBO called Watiek Watiek means we have hope. And we work for children born in captivity, children born of sexual violence in Northern region. I was abducted in 1996 in Aboke, St. Mary's Aboke. It's in Lira, and that the abduction took about 139 girls, but later 30 of us remain. They selected 30 of us to remain in captivity. And I came back in 2004. And from there, before coming back, I lived in the bush for about 8 years. And before coming back, I had promised that because the life was really not so easy, and I had promised myself that when I come back, I'll serve the community. So I think justice to the mothers having being employed, whereby they can work for those who can do something. The reason why, and by the way, the employment that they're saying, some of them, the casual work that they're doing, they are still being stigmatized because of that. They are still rejecting them to get that opportunity of having that skill training, of getting that, of having that stool and being freely to sell their items in the market, but still that abuse is still continuing. The stigma is still interrupting that. They need that freedom of getting their money out of their sweat. You know, they're not saying give us freely and we just sleep. No, they're saying give us something to do. Take us for this vocational training, and so that we earn in from our own sweat to cater for our children. They're talking of livelihood. Justice is not all about taking the perpetrator to court and then that is it. They need to repair their own situation. They need to revise what has happened to them. That is what they're asking.
An mabedo nyara chiel ma ke maga ma liba chiel mi abungwan pia abungwan bi.
I was abducted in 1995 at the age of 14 years from our home in a village called Pawel in Amur district. I was then taken to captivity. I returned from captivity in the year 2002, November, in that year 2002, in the 27th November.
Aberi lumwaka bor. Adu kila tiana chiel.
I stayed in captivity for 8 years, and I had 2 children. Unfortunately, one child passed on. I returned back home with one child. It's important for our children to be given access to education, not just education, but quality education. Because when our children are empowered education-wise, us mothers can be also empowered, because it helps to improve our lives. When our children are educated and they get gainful employment, our lives also improve. So it's really important, if the government needs to put our children, to give equal access also to our children, so that our children can access university education and all other levels of higher institutions of learning.
The third one is relationship-based justice, that at the core of it exists harmonious and peaceful coexistence with families, communities, and government representatives. Relationships that involves recognition of victimhood, recognition of suffering, and acknowledgement of failing to offer protection that were necessary for these women. Peaceful and harmonious relationship.
Neno lokom chimotokba kar mapol wan bene wakok chimotok bene tiada.
I would like to add something small, and it's about stigma. In Uganda, I would like to say, in Uganda here, we are not really well when it comes to stigma within our community where we live. We are not okay at all. We survivors, because any small quarrels that we engage in with our neighbors, or maybe our children have entered into small fights with our neighbors' children. The only thing they resort to is stigmatizing us. They start calling us names, and whenever we have quarrels with the neighbors, so the neighbors would just rush to the police and start saying, "Oh, we have threatened their lives. We have said we are going to kill them." And the police come and pick us immediately and take us to the police station. Yet when we find out properly, you find that we have not said anything, we have not threatened anyone's life, but it's because we had a quarrel with them, and since they know our background, that we are former captives, they are now using it against us. That is really making our lives very difficult within our communities where we live. And right now, stigma is at its highest level. Secondly, I would like to also talk about we survivors. We have also one problem. We survivors, we do not love ourselves. In that many of us have not accepted ourselves. It's important that we accept who we are, and we accept what has happened to us, and we need to learn to take ourselves like our other members of the community. We need to also live like them. We need to put that mindset away that, oh, we are former captives, we are survivors. We are the same as the community members. For me, I love myself, and I love who I am, and I have accepted whatever happened to me. I know sometimes some people, they expect me to be like, oh God, why did you let this happen to me? I was abducted, and my education was shattered. Now I'm not educated. My life was ruined. I would have been somebody. But for me, I've accepted who I am.
The fourth one is compensation, which just basically revolves around payment of these women. Compensation will recognize three things. It will recognize time lost in abduction by the women. It will recognize the suffering of these women, and it will also recognize their shattered professional career dreams.
One of the women who has been abducted, and I stayed in the bush for 7 years. They abducted me when I was 9 years old from my village. So by then I was still very young. They took me to the bush. I stayed for 7 years. Another issue is the issue of compensation, because as I talk, there are very many problems that we are going through. For one, for the issue of medical whatever attention. We have very many problems, we have sicknesses. So when you go to the hospital without money, you cannot even get any treatment. At least if they give us something, we can use it like for income generating activities. Every day you'll be getting some little money. When you have some business, every day you'll be getting some little money. That one, you'll use it for the issue of the hospital. You can use it for earning a living. You can even use that one for buying food for your children. If the business grow up, you can even use some part of the money for buying the land we are crying for. So for me, I see that the issue of income generating activities is very important, because that one will help us a lot. Without money, you cannot even stay in this world. The issue of this LRA war. This war happened when this government is on power. Now again, this is the same government. We came back, we found still ruling. So it is very important for them at least to do something that can really make us even happy. Because when we are suffering like this, we can even feel bad that they are the very people who are supposed to provide the security, and they have failed to protect us. Again, we have come back, they are even failing to take care of us. So I feel very bad, and if possible, the government should at least put some policy, some program should be put specifically for those ones who suffered during LRA war. I am Evelyn Amoy, chairperson for Women Advocacy Network, but I like to talk with our local language. In 1994,
I was abducted in the year 1994, and by then I was 12 years old. When I was abducted, we stayed in Uganda for a while, then I was taken to Sudan. I stayed in captivity for 12 and a half years. I had 3 children, but I returned back home with 2. We have been advocating as Women Advocacy Network for us to be repaired by the government because of the challenges that we went through in captivity, and the same and other challenge. Our education was disrupted, our lives were ruined. So for us to recover, we really need to be repaired by the government. And I would like to state that at this stage, poverty has become very intense among the survivors. We are not received adequate livelihood support or empowerment support. And as I speak, there's a lot of trauma among the survivors, and this trauma is leading to, has led to and is still leading to suicide among the survivors. And this is very, very difficult time. It's very challenging time, and I really call upon, uh, I call upon all actors and the world to come together at this time, this difficult time, because this is the time that really survivors need help. Because without that, things are really going from bad to worse for us. We did not go willingly to the LRA. We did not know the context of the war, the genesis of this war. We did not know, we did not understand anything. And it's very surprising that I was really surprised when we returned back from captivity, they were calling us fighters. Yet we did not willingly go there. We were abducted against our will and taken into captivity. And now then the government started calling us fighters. In fact, they did not they did not protect us. If they had protected us, we wouldn't have been taken there. When I visited Nigeria, we discovered that the government of Nigeria had repaired the survivors, of the conflict in their country. They're provided for. The survivors eat well. If they want to go anywhere, they're always provided security, you know. But for us, I feel like the government has forgotten about us. Like the government doesn't care. To me, justice would be an apology from the government. Also, I would consider it justice. An apology from the government. Uh, they should, for not protecting us, for not doing enough to protect us. And we also would like them to tell us really why did the conflict start? What was this conflict about? What was the genesis of this conflict? And why were we taken? Why were we used in this conflict? And why is it that they resorted to using guns?
Akele paper chomu nyoni we polegi nywero widano akele we paper chomu nyoni we polegi nywero widano ya.
For me, these are some of the things I would consider justice.
We love what we are little. We love what we are little. Chomu nyoni we polegi nywero widano ya. Akelo deno chanada, akelo neno chanada. Ando we love why right, we love lanya kele do, we love lanya kele ya, cho lanya kele yo. My way, yama wachi unudo.
These are the 4 key takeaways of Census of Justice as lived.
We love job we well, you wakele, we love job you get well, you come akele, we love we elite, we love job a lot of when on you wakele. We love we elite yo, we love we elite yo. We cho munyoni we polegi nweno we dano ya. Akele we, idemo Canada, Jalim rach, munyoni we polegi nweno we dano.
It is important for me to tell my story and disseminate the findings of my research because my research is unique in the sense that it's not like any other doctoral research that can be done and put on the shelves of a library. It is research that involves human beings that are going to benefit from the findings of the study. It is research that has policy and program implications for those making policies in the region, in Uganda. and for those implementing programs in the region as well. So I find it particularly important to disseminate these results beyond the academy. In fact, after the dissemination and validation workshop that I did this year in June in partnership with Watikigan and Women Advocacy Network, the community-based organizations that are actually survivor-led as well, some of the organizations in the region reached out to me to ask for a summary of findings and recommendations that came out from that workshop and my study to inform their program development and delivery, which to me is very important in the sense that they didn't just come to the workshop to listen to the findings, but they want to put it into action. I feel that I have a responsibility to tell this story, to share my experience and the experiences of the women in Northern Uganda, because these stories have been told, these stories have been written about, but largely not by people who are from the region, especially the stories that get to reach this part of the world in North America or, the North per se. Most of the storytellers are usually people who come to my community as researchers and experts and so on. I feel I have a responsibility to share this story because I am telling an authentic story. I'm not making up anything. I am not imposing my own hidden interests or bias. I am just telling these stories as plain as they are, as I saw them unfold, as I lived through them, as I experienced them, not as I read them in books, And when I was doing the research, the women told me this as well. We are telling you this because we know you are our own, you are our sister, and you're going to present the story right. So as I wrote this dissertation, as I did the analysis, I always had the voices of the women whispering at the back of my head that I had a responsibility to tell this story and tell it right.